Good evening and welcome. We are here to reconvene the conditional use hearing, and I will turn this over to Solicitor Clark.
Thank you, Commissioner Hecker. This is the continued hearing for the application of Shavram Realty Partners LLC for conditional use approval for the property located at 1209 Rydal Road in Abington Township. Our last hearing was on October 30th, 2023, where we began to take testimony and we recessed to tonight. We are still in the middle of the applicant's case. We completed a witness at our last hearing. And so, Mr. McHugh, you can call your next witness, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Again, Matthew McHugh for the applicant here. I would next call Greg Elmore.
Okay, let's swear him in first. Mark, you're going to swear him in?
I do. Sure. Greg Elmore, G-R-E-G E-L-M-O-R-E.
Mr.
that better?
McHugh, one of the individuals who has party status has asked for an offer of proof for Mr. Elmore's testimony. Can you give us an offer of proof?
Sure. Mr. Elmore is a development consultant who is retained by the applicant, is familiar with the project, can speak to the licensing requirements, other operational requirements for the facility, as well as the development of the overall conditional use plan.
Okay. And I note that I have not seen a CV for Mr. Elmore. Has one been provided, or will one be provided?
It is not being provided this time. I'll certainly will, as part of my initial examination of him, go through his qualifications regarding his experience and background.
Okay. You may proceed.
Party objects as to competency and relevance. If this person is not being called as an expert, is our understanding this person is from the state of Oregon, and how can that person be competent or relevant to testify?
We will overrule the objection. We will allow Mr. McHugh to examine his witness and to begin to go over his qualifications. At that point, any further objections that may want to be made can be made at that time, and they will be dealt with at that time. So, Mr. McHugh, you may proceed.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Elmore, can you please identify yourself for the record?
Sure. Greg Elmore.
And how are you employed?
I am a founder and partner of E2K Consulting out of Salem, Oregon.
And can you explain what E2K Consulting does?
Sure. We perform due diligence and entitlement process and do building layouts and site plan design for developers, contractors, and architects.
And do you have any specific specialty regarding development types?
Anywhere from multifamily housing to commercial, but our main focus is on senior living.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit about your own professional background and what you do at E2K Consulting?
Sure. Graduated from university in 1992, went directly into the architecture field. In 98, started working for a development company for senior housing. And for 10 years, I was in-house design and went through their process of management and development of senior housing on the West Coast. Whoa! When I left there, in 2008, I went back in the architecture field with a focus on senior housing and healthcare. And then from 2008, and I did that from 2008 to 2018 and started E2K Consulting in 2018.
So you've been working in some facet of the senior living facility development world since 1998, approximately?
At least 1998. Yeah, actually a little bit before then.
Okay. And as part of that work, have you focused on the development and operation of senior living facilities?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you provide some representative example, either number or particular projects of senior living projects that you've worked on?
Sure. I've worked on at least 125 across the country, across 23 different states, including and also Canada and Washington, D.C. I've actually got 4 different projects that I've done here in Pennsylvania. Those projects are Southampton Township, Taliesin Township, Collegeville, and Hanover Township.
And are you familiar with the subject property and the proposed development at 1209 Rydal Road?
I am.
And have you been engaged as a consultant in connection with that project?
From the start, when they started looking at senior housing, yes, I have.
Okay. And can you describe the various uses that are part of the proposed senior living project at 1209 Rydal Road?
Sure. The independent living is one, assisted living and memory care is the third.
So we've had kind of a lot of discussion about those, and
Sure.
I think they have specific meanings from them in the marketplace. Can you describe what each of those are and how they are utilized in the context of this project?
Sure. The independent living is typically a senior that is looking for a place to live that gives them a little bit of comfort with peers, but they're still very active. That is the building, the L-shaped building that we'll be talking about this evening. That is kind of they do have access to their vehicles typically, and they will be part of a bigger part of the society, or a bigger part of the community. That is not a need base living. That is typically a choice that they're moving into. Your assisted living and your memory care are typically a need based. Assisted living is going to be typically in the 80 to 85 year old range that will be moving in. And that is, family members have decided, or they have decided, that the comforts of being within a community are a little bit easier. They'll have access to staff that can help them with daily needs. And your memory care is typically an Alzheimer's type or some sort of a memory loss. That is going to be in a secure area of the building, not a lockdown. We don't like to call it lockdown, but it's a secure area. And that is, you have to qualify to reside in that portion of the building.
Let's speak a little bit more about the independent living. Are those residents more so free to come and go as they please from the facility?
They are, again, most of them, a majority of them do drive still. And if they come in with a partner, then at least one of the partners will drive. But yeah, they can come and go from the facility as they like. This is set up as senior apartments almost. Yes.
And as far as the assisted living and memory care, can you differentiate that from, say, a hospice care or a skilled nursing facility?
Sure. There's a misnomer often. This is not skilled nursing. This is not hospice. When this goes to the Commonwealth, it'll be requesting a very specific type of a license. And that license is going to allow it to do just a certain amount of care provided. There's no doctor, there's no full-time nurse on staff for this. There's no care there's no medical care that's given. There's only care as far as the resident needs and wants for daily activities.
Right. So it's talking about the assistance with daily activities and some of the services that are provided. Can you kind of provide an overview of what those services might be?
Sure. Laundry, assistance with bathing. There's 3 meals a day that are made for the assisted and the memory care groups. That they do communal meals, but the rest of it is going to be if there's anything outside of the community that they need to do, doctor visits, field trips, then those are all usually scheduled with a facility van.
And how about group activities?
There'll be a full-time activity director for someone on this size, for a community this size. So yeah, there'll be activities in an activity room, and in any of the common areas and in the outdoor areas around the building.
Can you speak briefly as to what the the rental or rate structure is and how these services are provided?
So the basics are included in the rent for the assisted living and the memory care. There's depending on who ends up managing the facility, there'll be different a la carte type what's the word, the a la carte type services that can be purchased above and beyond the standards. And the standards will include, they do include the laundry, the cleaning of the units, the meals, the meal prep, the service, and the activities.
So that I assume there's a base level of services that every resident would get, and then the ability then to add on to each of those depending on whatever's individual needs or wants are.
Yes, sir.
And are those services provided only during business hours? What's the
Well, it's
availability?
It's a 24-hour care facility. But it's, you know, it's staffed differently throughout the day. There will be a night shift that is much smaller, but yeah, it's staffed 24 hours a day, required to be staffed by the Commonwealth.
And those services are also provided 7 days a week then also?
Yes, sir.
One of the things we talked about with the prior witness was the zoning ordinance requirements. And you mentioned there are 3 different, you know, types of units here. Are you aware of how they're allocated amongst the buildings?
I am.
And if I have you pull up what is Exhibit A5, which are the floor plans, are those floor plans that you provide, that you prepared?
Yes.
I don't know if you're able to.
I have it now.
Should be, I think, the 3rd tab. Maybe that's 4. If we can go to the next one.
I don't have access. This is not working.
That's it. Yes.
You want
All right. So Greg, I have on the screen Exhibit A5, which are floor plans. Are these floor plans that you prepared for this project?
Yes.
And are you aware of the different unit types and mixes that are in the proposed buildings?
I am.
And can you provide a breakdown of what those are?
Yes. So there are
Parties were told there was no report in this case, and we are being shown an exhibit that's never been produced previously and was not produced as part of the applicant's petition. So we object to its use at this time.
This was submitted with the application months ago.
Do you know what page it is?
I don't have the
At some
completed app.
point, we'd like to get the page, and so we will not rule on this objection at this moment. We'll wait until, if it's part of the application, then the objection will be overruled. If it's not, we'll deal with it at that time.
Also, no, I don't, to respond to that, I don't believe there's an obligation that we're only limited to things that were submitted with the application as part of our presentation.
Understood. You can continue to examine your witness.
All right, Mr. Elmore, again, so are you familiar with the different unit types and mixes that are contained on the project?
yes.
And can you describe what those are?
Sure. In one building, there's 46 independent living units. That's 37 studio and 1-bedroom units, and 9 2-bedroom units.
And what is the percentage of total units that are independent living?
It's just over 38%.
Okay. And how about assisted living units?
67 assisted living units. 20 of those are studios. 43 are 1-bedroom. 4 are 2-bedroom.
And what is the total percentage of units that are assisted living?
That's just over 55, just under 56%.
And how about memory care?
There's 7 memory care units with 11 beds. That's about almost 6% of the total units.
And are you familiar with the requirement in the zoning ordinance for this particular use that at least there must be 2 unit types that are greater than 25% of the total units?
Yes.
And does this mix of units meet that requirement?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now I'm going to have you run through the floor plans that we have up here on Exhibit A5. starting on page 1. Can you describe what we're seeing here?
Sure. This is the basement or lower level of the assisted living and memory care. To the left of the screen up here, I don't have a mouse. Sure. To the left of the screen up here, you'll see the underground parking that was testified about earlier or in the previous. Is it there? And then, sure.
Well, we still need that first page up. Okay.
And then the right-hand side is really just, it's the,
So I just want to orient you.
Is this what you want up?
Yep, that's what about. Yep. So I just want to orient you. So you're in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a descriptor. What is that? What does that say?
the basement plan and common area.
And so we're talking about the basement floor plan right now for the assisted living memory care building.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your testimony so far was to the left, which I believe is outlined in red. That's the underground parking structure.
That is correct.
Okay. And what is on the right of the sheet that you're seeing there?
No. There we go. So the right-hand side of the sheet is showing the common area for the assisted living portion of the building. At the top right corner, you can see the main entrance into the facility. There's a concierge and the offices and the mailroom that happen up there, along with the elevator bank. There's also a living room that's there, and then the main dining and activity space just below that. This area right here is health and meds, and this is all the commercial kitchen, the indoor trash area, the commercial laundry, and then this is the kitchen in the back.
Okay. Are there any living units down in this portion? Of the
There are no living units on the basement level, no.
And if you know, or do you know the general size of the common areas that are down in this area?
About 8,700 square feet, yes, sir.
Okay. Now moving to if we have the next page brought up. Next sheet, thank you. Okay. In the bottom right-hand corner, can you just describe what we're seeing now?
Sure, this is the first floor plan of the ALMC and we do have some common area as well on the first floor.
Okay, so can you describe what the layout is for the first floor?
The bottom right corner, it's a little bit hard to see, but it's kind of shaded. It looks like it's got just a handful of units that are shaded. That's our memory care, our 7 units. There are 3 private units, 4 semi-private units. That's where you get the 11 beds.
Can you just describe the difference between a private and a semi-private room?
Sure. A private room they're just 2 different price points. And residents can stay in a private room, but we also find that a lot of residents in a memory care, they do really well with a neighbor. That neighbor in this unit, for instance, right here, there's a bed here and there's a bed here, and they share a bath and a common area, but they have their own bed spaces. This is a private unit right here, and that's set up where everything in that unit is private to that resident.
Okay, as for those memory care units, are there any kitchen facilities located in those?
No, there's we're not allowed by the Commonwealth. It doesn't allow us to put kitchens in those units. So what happens is right here, there's a service elevator that comes up from the kitchen. There's a kitchen hallway down on the bottom level. Everything's cooked in the kitchen below this, brought down this hallway and pulled into a warming kitchen right here. This is just a common space and a dining area that's set up simply for the residents on this wing of the memory care.
Are there also assisted living units shown on this floor plan?
There are assisted living. The rest of the building is mostly assisted living units. You can see the unit layouts as they come around the building and they go down this leg of the building. There's also activity, wellness, laundry areas, and just other common spaces that will be set aside for programming. Once we get in there and really determine how this space wants to react with the resident.
Okay, there's also an area that's identified as outdoor plaza over parking. Can you describe that?
Sure. So off of this activity space and off of this sorry, off of this activity space here and this activity space here, there's outdoor space. This is all green, or it'll be pavers or outdoor area above that parking lot that's below. That's all outdoor area that's open to the residents. It'll likely be fenced here at the bottom. So just as a protector for the residents.
And this is at the ground floor level?
That is at the ground floor level.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And are there laundry facilities for the residents on these floor plans?
Laundry. So this is resident laundry for the assisted, not laundry is taken care of by staff for the memory care. It's also can be taken care of by staff for the assisted.
That's one of those a la carte items.
That's one of those a la carte items. And there's a commercial laundry down in the basement.
Okay. All right, can we move to the next page?
This is second floor, and this is all assisted living. So once we get to the second floor of this plan, the memory care just happens on the one leg of the building. This is the same basic layout stacked on top of the one below it. We've just gone to additional units, 30 units of assisted living on this one. So the whole thing is assisted. Our corners are set up for the elevators that are going to travel up and down, and just mechanical areas, then sitting area and laundry. But the rest of this floor is dedicated to units.
And so before we had some gray shaded units that were the memory care. Those don't exist on this second floor plan.
Correct.
Okay. And in each of these pages, there's a chart that identifies the number of units, what type they are, and what bed count they are, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We can go to the next page. All right, what is this page showing?
So what we've done is since we daylight the basement on this side at the very bottom, that we've just taken this leg off. So we have ultimately 3 stories here and ultimately 3 stories on this side. So 18 more units of assisted are on this floor. And there's a typo here. I apologize. There's 12 one beds and 12 beds, not 18. I apologize. But 18 beds here, same laundry, probably a sitting area or some sort of an activity that would happen in this corner of the building. Elevators that we talked about go all the way up. There's a potential for an access to a rooftop garden for the assisteds over here. Those can be pretty popular if they're handled appropriately. And it's always kind of a nice amenity to allow for the assisted residents.
So that's a conceptual feature, nothing that's absolutely proposed at this point.
Correct.
Okay. We can go to the next page. Okay, we're now moving into the other building.
This is your independent building, independent apartment building. This is the basement plan. It's common area only. So you come in into the site and you pull into the parking and you would enter into this just little lobby area. This gives us our mail room, a little coffee and a break area. But again, this is not staffed like an assistant. It's not really even staffed. If there's any need for anything that these residents would have, they would walk over to the offices of the assisted living. So this is really just a gathering space and a waiting area for the residents that live here in this building. And on this floor, there are no units. It's just get me into the building and be able to access the units above.
All right, let's move to the next page, please. All right, and what is this page showing?
These are this is the first floor plan of the apartments and a little bit of the common area again.
And when you say apartments, you're meaning the independent living units,
Independent,
right?
yeah, the independent apartments. Apologize. These are the independent apartments. The reason you kind of call them apartments is they are fully functioning. They have a full kitchen. They'll make their own meals. And we've got anywhere from a 2-bedroom. This is a 1-bedroom unit, and this is a studio unit. So 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and then a studio apartment for independence. And then the middle is really just another gathering space. This is likely going to be open to below just to give us a little bit of a character at that entry. And then this is just kind of a conference room. We haven't really determined what that full use will be yet. But it would be just a gathering space. Sometimes they do knitting classes, other things that can be offered. The residents usually set all those up and they just, and they'll.
So
it'll be-
general common area gathering space
Yes,
to
sir.
be determined. Okay. If we can move to the next page. What is this showing?
Second floor of those independent apartments as well, basically the same layout that we had on the first floor, same number of units, square footage and everything.
And I think in this one, it's showing library where the first floor showed coffee bar, but those are sort of interchangeable as to whatever the residents prefer and want to utilize.
Yes, sir.
And then if we go to the last sheet, I believe.
The only difference on this one is on that top floor, where we had that common area space. We just added back another studio and we put in some storage in here. These are always good when residents have excess. We give them little lockers that they can come in and put anything from Christmas decorations to leftover paperwork.
All right, anything else to add on the floor plans?
No, sir.
Okay. The conditional use requirements in the zoning ordinance, they speak about the minimum property standards issued by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Are you familiar with those?
Yes, sir.
And just can you briefly explain what those are?
Well, they're minimum requirements that buildings have to meet. And once the architect is the requirements that HUD are going to have and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are going to have, they're going to once it's designed, it's going to have to meet a certain criteria. This is on the path to meet that. It's going to take your professional architect once you get there to finish those, but all HUD standards are assumed in this design.
And also, obviously, you'll provide more detailed architectural plans, but the same with the township building code requirements.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you familiar as to whether there are any regulations that are issued by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that will apply to this facility?
There definitely are. It's going to have to go through a process. The assisted and the memory care will have to go through a licensing process with the Commonwealth. The independent apartments don't. There's not a healthcare that's provided with those. They're age restricted and independent living.
Okay. And so you said the assisted living and memory care has a Commonwealth licensure requirement.
Yes, sir.
And they will have to obtain that licensing to operate this facility here.
They'll have to, and likely the township is going to request us to do some sort of a review by the Commonwealth prior to them even accepting our drawings for building permit. Yes.
Sure. Okay. Now, as we move into more kind of operational aspects of it, there was some testimony at the last hearing regarding the employees as part of our parking count. And I believe the testimony from John Anderson was that 19 employees would be on the largest shift here. Is that accurate for this facility?
That is accurate. Yes.
Okay. Can you describe how you get to that number of 19 employees on the largest shift?
Sure. We'll employ, this is probably going to employ at some point, once it's fully occupied, anywhere from 58 to 62 people. But those are sometimes most of those are part-time jobs. Your shift changes happen. We're going to start bringing in shift before breakfast, and they'll leave they'll leave after lunch and after dinner prep. And that's where your 19 employees at max shift is going to take place.
And can you describe sort of how that employee breakdown is allocated, who they are, where they come from?
Sure. The first to come in, and we'll just start in the morning. The first to come in the morning will be the cook and some staff in the kitchen area, just to start the prep for the day. And at that point, your night shift, your overnight shift is probably going to be in the 8. So they'll start rolling in before breakfast, and then as staff start coming in for the residents, specifically for the residents, we stagger those in, because the last thing you want to do is pull all 8 of them off the clock at one time and then hope that everybody has showed up on time to take that position. So we'll start rolling 2 or 3 of them out over the 15 to 20-minute intervals until we get to that maximum staff shift.
Objection, non-responsive. The question was, can you articulate which staff members make up the 19?
I think I'm trying to get there.
Okay, we'll overrule that objection and give Mr. McHugh a little leeway.
So Mr. Elmore, so let's start with the staff that is responsible for the assisted living and memory care
Sure.
residents. On the largest shift, who are those people? How many of them are there?
There are probably 4 to 5 that will be in the kitchen staff.
Well, let's just talk about related to the residents, I guess, caring for the residents.
Sure.
Let's start there.
Typically, that's on the assisted, that's anywhere from 10 to 12 beds per staff member. And on the memory care, that'll be anywhere from 10 to 12 beds per staff. And on the memory care, that'll be anywhere from 5 to 8, depending on the acuity of the resident.
Okay. And how do you come up with that number?
Well, the Commonwealth they don't really have a per bed count that they do. It's an hour that they're requesting. And that's just a breakdown of the number of beds and the number of hours that you need to be providing any type of a care to that resident.
So are the 19, is that based off the Commonwealth requirements, or is that based off of your experience operating, developing facilities? And
That's based off of my experience.
Mhm.
And typically, this is a count that's a very conservative count for your max. Most of the projects that I do are much larger than this, and typically the staff sizes for those much larger projects in the 150 bed range is about 24.
So your testimony, if I understand it, was you would have to have, if we start with the assisted living,
Yes, sir.
1 employee for every 10 to 12 beds is what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we have 71 beds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So approximately on the large shift, how many employees are you looking at conservatively there?
Though, I mean, seven plus, well, 7 would be probably what you would do, because they're likely you're not going to have the acuity levels that you need. And we're also talking about 71 beds at full capacity. These typically run at about 92% capacity, but if
Okay.
we were full capacity, you're looking at about 7.
And for purposes of compliance with the ordinance, we have to assume we're going to be at full capacity.
Yes,
So
sir.
you say you have 7 employees for the assisted living, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you said, what was your testimony for the memory care beds?
Depending on the acuity, 5 to 8. So if you've got 11 beds,
We have 11 memory care beds.
so likely what you're going to do is you're going to have two resident caregivers in that area, and then a floater if needed that'll come from the assisted side.
So so far I have from you 7 for the assisted living and then 2 for the memory care.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, are those employees that are providing services to the residents, are they specifically allocated to just the assisted living residents and the memory care? Are they cross-trained? Do they have the ability to work across the building?
The memory care will have a little bit more requirements as far as that's concerned, but they can easily go over to the assisted side as needed. The assisted side will have someone there that can come into the memory care at all times that can do it. But yes, for the most part, those licenses for caregiving will interchange.
And so you'll have at the largest shift somewhere around 9 employees that are able to assist everybody, all the residents in that building.
Yes, sir.
Who else is in the building?
So you'll have an admin, front desk, and they're basically just a gatekeeper to make sure that nobody's coming into the building that's not supposed to be coming into the building, just a safety. Management will be there at some point.
Well, so we have 1 front desk person
Yes, sir.
there all the time, 24 hours, business hours.
They'll be there business hours, typically
Okay.
7 to 7.
Okay. So we're at 10 people now, right?
Yes.
Okay, now who else is in the building?
Admin, likely the manager, sorry, a manager will be there. And that person will be there during the largest shift as well. And they're typically there 7 to 7. Then you'll have off and
So
on.
let's stop there. So that's 11 now, I think we have.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who else?
Kitchen staff, probably at the greatest in this kitchen will be 5, but likely that's probably too many. 4, because a lot of times those kitchen staff will be serving as well. And when all the residents are in the dining room, most of your staff that's serving the resident in the assisted living is also helping serve lunch,
Serve meals. Okay.
serving meals.
So that gives us, you said 4, 10, 11. I have 15 right now.
Yes,
That's the
sir.
largest shift. Anybody else that might be in the building?
The only other ones would be activity and then maintenance. But
Okay.
that would, then that's,
Are those full-time
no, those are not full-time.
positions? So just explain what their roles might be.
Sure, activities are typically midday activities. So and they'll likely be the ones that plan field trips. So if they go out, if they're going to the library, or if they're going somewhere out, they're the ones that are planning those and actually driving the bus that will take those residents to whatever outings they might have.
Then you said maintenance also.
Maintenance is just, they'll often come in scheduled, but not every day of the week.
So I have 15 definitely on the largest shift, a couple of people that may be there if necessary.
Yes, sir.
And we provided 19 as part of our count for parking. Seems to be a conservative number for the total number.
Yes.
Okay. So based on your opinion and your experience, is 19 employees sufficient for the max shift in this property?
Yes, it is.
Now, can you explain how they are allocated amongst the two buildings? Because we talked about assisted living and memory care. We didn't really talk about any employees for the independent living.
Yeah, and there's really no full-time employees that will be in that independent building. Again, that is a independent apartment complex. So the maintenance and upkeep of that building is just handled by the same people that are already within the assisted building.
So there's not a front desk person.
No, sir.
There's no employee that's stationed over there. If
No.
a resident from the independent living has an issue that requires employee assistance, what happens?
They can call or they can walk over to the assisted
And one of the employees that's already on shift is going to address that.
That's
Somebody new is not coming onto the property necessarily to
correct.
to work in that building. Okay.
Correct.
Can you describe, and you talked a little bit about the state's ratio for employees to residents, but can you describe how the employee counts and also the plans that we're proposing for approval, how they kind of work in the context of the state licensing process?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Sorry.
So we're saying 19 from a parking requirement, from a zoning ordinance requirement.
Yes.
And we're going to go to the state and they're going to have to obviously take a look and make sure that they believe that 19 is the appropriate number. So what happens in that context?
So in that, well, once the provider is brought into this process, then they actually have to seek a license from the Commonwealth as well. That license on how they operate the building, they'll be explaining, in depth how that is, how they plan to operate. What we've done is we've made some very conservative assumptions as to what that would, what that max would look like. So that's why we put the 19 in there, because that to me, that is the worst case is not that is the top of what would be needed to operate this at max shift.
So is it possible during the licensing process that the state would say some lesser number of employees on the max shift is what is necessary to operate for the number of beds?
There is a possibility. Absolutely.
And as far as how the state licenses, do they license based on the number of residents? Is that how your license works?
Well, the Commonwealth basically the subsection 2857, they just call it direct care staffing. And there's a long definitions of how they do it, and it's based on resident needs, what licenses you are trying to accommodate, and how many hours each resident needs. The one thing that you have to keep in mind here is, again, assisted living and memory care. This is not skilled nursing. These are not bedridden. So they go into detail if someone is bedridden or non-mobile, it needs more care. But that's under a totally different license than assisted living or a memory care. Once residents become bedridden for a certain amount of time, then staff is talking to family members at that point, because that's not what this license does. We don't provide medical gases. We don't provide medical treatment in a facility like this. It's just residential care. So once you get into something that is requiring some of these, the 2 or 2.5 hours per resident, that's not what this license is providing.
We talked a little bit about how the shift changes were going to operate. Will the facility always operate on the largest shift?
No, it does not. That largest shift is, again, probably somewhere between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. is the largest shift.
And other times throughout the day, they'll be operating in smaller shifts.
Correct.
Okay. Are you familiar with where the applicant here is proposing for the employee parking?
Yes, employee parking is going to be in that basement underneath the assisted living and memory care building. And that's
And by basement, you mean the underground garage?
Underground garage,
Okay.
yes.
And are you familiar as to whether the applicant is willing to agree to that as a condition of any approval, that all employee parking will be located down there?
That is my understanding, yes.
And just from an operational perspective, what does having the employees park in that area do for the site?
Well, it keeps the site and the parking close to the entry, so that the entries to these buildings are going to be monitored. So it keeps all those parking spaces available to the resident and to guests. It also puts most of our traffic is not out in the open on the parking area. It's underneath in the garage, and they have direct access into the building that they will be working in. So inclement weather, everything, it's a bonus feature. Yes.
And does that underground garage also serve as a barrier from noise, from things like people closing car doors, locking their car door,
Yes.
etc.?
Sure.
So, and if those are employees that are, say, starting their shift earlier in the morning before breakfast, they're going to be located in that underground
They'll be
area.
in the garage. Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Can you discuss a little bit about how deliveries will be handled for this facility? And if it's helpful, maybe do you want to have the site plan look up there, which would be exhibit A3 that was previously identified?
I still don't have a mouse. Can we bring up, sorry, A3? Is that right?
Yep, A3. That's it. Yep, that's it.
So there was some.
Before we get into location, can you describe what types of deliveries are going to be coming to the facility?
Sure. So 2 things. For the assisted living and memory care building, the U-shaped building, you've got food, and you've got mail, and then you've got trash pickup. For the independent living, you've got mail.
Okay. So let's start with food.
Sure.
What type of food is coming? How is it coming?
So there was testimony talking about a tractor trailer. That's not what's going to happen at this building is just not big enough for that single kitchen that we have here, the single commercial kitchen that we have here. I would imagine at most you're going to have 2 deliveries per week of food, because we want to keep that fresh. So that's why the 2 deliveries.
I guess those are spread out throughout the week.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Those 2 deliveries of food will come in on a truck that's, I know testimony said tractor trailer, but those are coming in on 2, at most a 3-axle truck, just a box truck, delivered to this section right here.
And you're identifying what is the designated loading area for the assisted living
And
memory care
and
building.
it has full access right to the kitchen and to the pantry storage area. Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Now, you're gonna have two deliveries. Are all those those two deliveries going to cover all of the food for the facility for the entire week?
Yes,
And so it's a multi-product shipment or
it is.
delivery.
It
There's
is.
not going to be a bread truck
No,
and then
a milk truck and then
truck
no, sir.
Like Wawa or the grocery store would have.
Correct.
Okay. And do we have idea on the timing of when those would occur?
Sure. We won't take it during breakfast prep, and we won't take it during lunch, which is our biggest meal. So typically that's going to come maybe from between hours of 10 and 11. And I've had facilities that, that mandate deliveries for kitchen come in between 10 and 11 or 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Depending on what the route that they're going to take, those trucks will come in on a scheduled route, and they can deliver it between those hours, because we don't have the staff to take it, or if we do have the staff, they're in meal prep already, or they're in meal service already.
And I guess then you're also talking about sort of that higher level shift time when these deliveries are coming in.
Yes, sir.
And it wouldn't be beneficial for the facility to have it overnight or early in the morning. Can you explain why?
Yes, there's a lot of discussion about the noise that might come out of this facility, and I can tell you that the residents of this facility will complain about the noise before any neighbors will. So we're not going to bring something in early in the morning. We're not going to come get trash early in the morning. We're not going to take deliveries late at night. We're going to take deliveries when it's convenient for our residents and convenient for our staff.
Do you have an idea on the loading, unloading time for these trucks when they come in?
How long?
Yeah, how long it takes to load and unload them?
Uh,
You're there for 15 minutes or there for an hour?
They're not there for an hour. They're probably depending on what they're trucking in and out, it'd be 15 to 30 minutes at most.
Okay. And you'd indicated this, but I just want to make sure you kind of confirm and clarify. All of the food deliveries are going into the assisted living memory care building. Why is that?
There's no commercial kitchen. There's no services provided in the independent living. So everything that's cooked on this site is cooked in the assisted and memory care building.
Okay. Now you said there could be other mail deliveries for both buildings.
Sure.
Explain that.
Mail will likely make a stop at both buildings, your typical mail. And then even my grandmother does Amazon still. So Amazon's going to come, UPS, whoever else might come, and they'll make stops but they're going to be on the same schedule that they have with the residents around it.
Any other deliveries that would normally come to a facility like this?
No other deliveries. No.
Okay.
The only other one, well, we haven't talked about refuse, but
Right.
we'll get there.
Just talk about the way that it's going to come in. Well, before we get there, you talked about things like only having the deliveries at a certain time, certain days potentially.
Yes.
How are we able to control that and enforce that?
Well, you sign contracts with your delivery. The big one is Cisco. You sign contract with Cisco and say, my trash comes on these days, so you have this day and this day to deliver foods, and we determine when those deliveries take place and how much we get based on the number of residents that we have there. So early on, we may just have one truck because but ultimately you're looking at 2 deliveries a week just to make sure that we keep things fresh.
Okay. So you kind of spoke briefly about the testimony prior about the tractor trailer and what I'm going to refer to as sort of the hammerhead at Plan South.
Okay.
Can you describe or discuss whether that sort of alternative loading area is necessary from an operational perspective?
Not in my professional opinion, it isn't. I think we put that there to meet an ordinance requirement. But I can't imagine that we wouldn't use them in this typical setup. We've got plenty of space to handle what delivery that we need at the time of day, just in that single loading area.
Okay, so if it were determined that from an ordinance perspective, we didn't need those alternative loading areas, do you know whether the applicant would be willing to eliminate those loading areas?
Yes, we would eliminate those areas, and we would probably take that paving and put it into something, greener. We'd probably put it into grasscrete or some sort of a paving back there that's not.
And I think if you had listened to John Anderson's testimony, he mentioned that area does provide emergency access for emergency vehicles. Would still need that potentially.
You will,
but it could be restricted to or made not available to or enticing to delivery drivers to come down that area.
Correct.
Sure. Okay. All right. Now you started to go into trash collection. Can you describe how trash collection will occur at the facility?
Sure. Well, it might be best if we go back to, sorry.
A5, the first page. Yeah, all the way at the top page of the exhibit. Thank you.
So right here, you can see, I think it's kind of blurry, but I believe that says the trash right there.
Yes.
So you've got a common laundry. Here's the kitchen. This will be the trash area, and there'll be a corridor that connects this here. And this is that loading area out here that sits out in front. So it sits in front of the staff lounge and the common laundry. And roughly where you can see this wall right here that extends off this stair tower. That's that wall that we talked about building, and it kind of extends even further down this area. That's the wall that we talked about including to screen where this dumpster would sit on pickup day, but it sits inside here, so we can get all of our main trash creators happen right here. So we store it in here, and then on pickup day we roll it out, and it gets picked up by, it'll be a commercial group that we hire to come pick it up. So they may roll it out, we may roll it out, but as soon as it's picked up, it gets rolled back in for
okay, and
use later.
So the operator or applicant would have to contract with a private hauler to serve the facility.
Yes.
Okay, and similar to the Cisco contract, they would have the ability to dictate the dates and times upon which. Now, a facility of this size, I mean, how often is trash being picked up or needed to be picked up?
Well, and that's going to depend on the size of the container, but no more than twice a week.
Okay, so we're not talking multiple times a day,
no,
or even every day.
No.
Okay.
No. And we're also not talking that's the big one that would take place during the daylight hours, not in the evenings and not in the early mornings.
So you're looking at similar days to the food, or similar times to the food deliveries,
similar times to the food delivery,
alternating day.
Yes, sir.
And potential, if they separate trash and recycling, there could be 2 collections, maybe.
Yes,
depending on the contract.
Yes.
Okay. Let's now move to just.
Thanks.
And you talked briefly about this a little bit and hinted to it, but the noise from the development and its impact on both the residents of the area and the residents of this facility, and how that's handled.
Well, the only noise that's created is really your delivery and your pickup. So I don't know of any other. We're a quiet neighbor beyond that.
Okay, what
beyond
about,
noise.
let's go to I think the one that everybody else is thinking, emergency vehicles.
Okay.
So, I mean, obviously there's going to be some level of emergency vehicles
Sure,
based on the type of resident you have.
yes.
Can you describe the frequency upon which that may occur?
That's going to be driven by the acuity of the resident. But these are not bedridden. We're not skilled nursing. but there are instances. There are going to be times when an ambulance needs to come, and we can't predict what that would be, but typically you're looking at maybe 5 calls a month.
Okay, so let's also then talk about who the facility is drawing from. Is it the intent to draw from residents of the surrounding area, the general
Sure.
area?
Sure. When
So-
yeah,
Go ahead.
when you come into this, your provider starts looking at a 5 and maybe as much as a 10-mile radius, and we know that the residents that will be living here currently live within 5 to 10 miles, or family members that have aging relatives that live somewhere else. But a family member or a resident, a future resident, is probably going to live within 5 to 10 miles of this.
So
facility.
if that resident who lives within that were to have a medical event, they're likely calling on similar emergency services.
They are.
Okay. Now, if that event were to occur at the facility, does the fact that there are
Trained staff.
there potentially limit even the number of, or the need to call?
Absolutely. A slip and fall is going to be assessed differently at an assisted living facility than it would be at a home, because at a home, there's really no other choice but to call an emergency service. And an assisted living, there are pull stations, there are active buttons, active call button systems that will alert staff if there's an issue. So staff can assess prior to calling emergency.
Okay. How about the impacts of site lighting? And can you describe how that is integrated into this development?
Sure. I know the discussion, the previous testimony was site lighting is cut off from all adjoining residents around this facility. I can assure you that will happen also with the building. One of the largest complaints from residents, if you don't do it right, from residents that live in this facility, is that the light is too bright or it shines into my room. So downlight, cutoff light is basically required for this type of facility.
And it's going to be, and it's designed to avoid light spillover onto properties, obviously.
Spillover off the property and spillover into the facility that we have as well.
Okay. And you also started to talk about this a little bit earlier, but can you just describe, I mean, obviously I have a traffic engineer that'll go into a little bit greater detail on this, but from an operational and from your experience developing, the amount of vehicular resident traffic that is generated from the site.
Sure. I would love to tell you that we get visitors all the time to these residents.
Well, I'm talking.
It's okay. I'll start over. I would love to tell you.
Well, I'm going to stop you because that's going to be my next question. I'm going to talk
Okay.
about residents who live at the facility and their vehicular traffic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, independent, I would say probably 75% of my independent will have a car. The rest of them will either use the bus or will carpool with a friend that's there. Historically, 2 to 5%, and the 5% is very rare. In case you have someone who moves into the assisted living and has a couple, and one of them can still drive, but typically 2 to 5% of my assisted residents will have a car. And a lot of times they'll come with a car and then it'll eventually go away. And none of my memory care, that's kind of part of it. You know, if you're moving into a memory care, then at some point the family has taken your keys away.
And I think you mentioned this previously, but the facility will provide some alternative transportation opportunities for the residents.
99% of them do. So I can't imagine that this one would not.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, visitor traffic.
Sorry. Yes. I would love to tell you that we get lots of visitors. The fact of the matter is we get regular visitors, but it's never full. And the last thing that we want to do is build a impervious parking lot that's empty. An impervious parking lot that's empty. Holidays, there will be a little bit more traffic, where they'll come pick up mom, to go to Thanksgiving. They'll come pick up mom for any other winter holidays. Mother's Day is a big one as well. Or they'll come and visit on birthdays and stay. But it's just the traffic, your traffic is going to be generated mostly by your employees in and out.
And go ahead.
Yeah, and the nice part about that is picking up mom on Thanksgiving is typically not real busy traffic, or Mother's Day. That's not, those are all holidays where traffic is not as busy. It's not like a peak hour traffic.
Understood. Okay, so aside from sort of the development impacts that we've discussed already, anything else of noteworthy regarding impact the development may have and operational aspects of the property?
None that I can think of. No, sir.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Elmore.
Before we turn it over to the township solicitor to ask questions, with the same process we went last time, there was an objection earlier regarding an exhibit that was shown on the screen and whether or not it had been previously provided. It has been confirmed that that exhibit was in the application packet, so that objection will be overruled. And now we'll turn it over to Mr. Heleniak from the township to ask questions of Mr. Elmore. And again, just so everyone is clear, the process will then be commissioners, whoever is the neighborhood designee this evening, parties who are in person, and then parties who are on Zoom. So.
Thank you. Mr. Elmore, my name is Greg Heleniak. I'm with the Township Solicitor's Office. And just so you know, I don't believe you were here last time. My role tonight is to ask you some questions to clarify any points for the commissioners as they undertake their review of the application and consider the testimony. As a starting point, did you review, I know you testified a lot about the ordinance this evening. Did you reviewed the zoning ordinance in preparing the plans and the layout and your testimony this evening?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Along with engineering, yes.
Thank you. So my first question relates to the facilities that are being proposed on this property. I believe what's being proposed is what the township considers to be use E10, which is a life care facility, continuing care. You familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
And then also use E12, which is the nursing home facility.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So under the E10 use, which is defined, just let me know if this is familiar to you so that everybody's on the same page as to what this use is defined as. A residential facility, building, or complex of buildings exclusively designed and operated for persons in need of life care arrangements, within which is provided private or semi-private living and sleeping quarters with private or common eating facilities, together with ancillary services for healthcare, social, and recreational services. And then it goes on to say dependent care includes personal care, congregate care, immediate care, and skilled nursing care. Does that definition sound familiar to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's two separate facilities here, correct? There's the independent living facility and then the assisted living and memory care facility.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Under this definition, I guess it's your testimony that certainly the assisted living facility and the memory care facility falls under this life care facility definition. As a dependent care facility?
Yes. I believe the assisted does.
And the memory care as well?
I believe that's more of an E12.
That you would define, you would define that as a memory, a nursing home, which includes a licensed nursing or convalescent home with 24-hour skilled nursing care to 4 or more chronic or convalescent patients.
No, I would pull that back to the E10. You're correct.
Okay. So as I mentioned in the last sentence of that definition, is it talks about dependent care. So I'm gonna step away from that and focus a little bit on the independent care
Sure.
facility first, or independent living facility. The and just bear with me for a second, because I want to make sure that you are on the same page with me as I ask this question. The definition for E10 has two permitted uses that aren't a dependent care facility. One is a village dwelling unit, which is stated to be when part of a life care facility. A village dwelling unit is a small detached dwelling unit resembling a single family dwelling unit and intended for occupancy by a single family unit, as opposed to a large apartment building, which is the other option, which is defined as a multifamily dwelling with full provisions for independent living, in which each dwelling unit is associated with one or more common areas designed for the exclusive use and benefit of all occupants. So the independent living facility would qualify as a large apartment building, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in your testimony, you went through the floor plans of both facilities. And I think it would benefit the commissioners to understand exactly how that independent living facility, which you identify the private dwelling units that are existing there. How is that independent living facility providing life care arrangements?
Well, so typically when you have an independent living that's on a campus with an assisted, the life care would happen with the same call buttons that would patch back to the assisted building. So if I have emergency call buttons that are in those, they all ring back to the assisted facility. That is the life care that's typically provided in an independent living.
Because there's no independent staffing for the independent living facility, correct?
Correct.
And outside of the life care, there's no staffing at all in the independent living facility.
There's regular maintenance that takes place, and there's regular trash pickup. There's staff that would come through there, but it's all staff that's utilized with the assisted building as well. There's no dedicated staff to the independent, not like you have in the assisted.
And so that, I guess that would cover the healthcare ancillary services. Does this independent living facility, is it proposed to have any social or recreational ancillary services associated with it?
It does. There's common areas provided. We talked a little bit about some of those. There's coffee stations. There's common areas on all floors except the top one.
But there's no programming provided by the facility, correct? That you said that all the programming would generally originates with the residents themselves?
Correct.
So those common spaces are, I guess they're just that. They're common spaces that the residents can take advantage of.
Yes, sir.
But it's not any arrangements or programming that's being provided by the facility itself.
Not typically, no.
So in how this independent living facility is proposed, outside of the ordinance's definition defining the structure as a large apartment building, this truly is just operating as is it just operating as a large apartment building? It just age qualified apartment building?
I think there's a little bit more nuance to it than that, but it is a large independent apartment building. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm just going to circle back to that. You talked about the 19 employees that would be on site at max staffing, and you walk through the breakdown of that with Mr. McHugh. Just so I understand, the commissioners understand, those 19 employees, other than if they're called on a healthcare call button or it's regular maintenance, they are all based in the assisted living memory care building, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you talked a little bit about the design of the site. I know you talked a lot about the parking and the other staff. In your review of the ordinance, did you have an opportunity to review the conditional use standards in the ordinance?
Yes, in concert again with the engineer, but yes, some of them. Or we went through all of them. Sorry.
Okay. And you also testified that you worked on several other projects in Pennsylvania that are of a similar nature. I think you mentioned Collegeville and Tallamenson as certain examples.
Yes, sir.
Also, Montgomery County municipalities nearby
Yes.
to Abington. One of the conditional use standards here is suitability for the proposed use for the property in question. As you walk through the site and the parking and the topography of the site, is this property particularly suited for assisted living, given its general grade and change in grade throughout the property?
Well, what we've done is I mean, there's a lot of dirt that has been moved. We have created space. We have created accessible walkways, and that are all flat. There is topography around the site, but within the site and within the development piece of it, that topography has been dealt with to a point where, yeah, the facility and the outdoor spaces and the connectivity that we're looking for can be met at an accessible grade.
Thank you. You talked a little bit about the operational standards. I know Mr. McHugh walked you through a bit about deliveries and trash trucks, food deliveries, et cetera. It doesn't sound as though particularly large trucks will be servicing the site. Is that correct?
Not for this size facility, no, sir.
But it is, I think it's the township's understanding, as this is cited from the previous testimony, that these buildings are in relative close proximity to neighboring single family dwellings, correct?
Yes.
What are the operational steps that are being taken to ensure that excessive noise from deliveries, cooking, or excessive odors from the kitchen aren't impacting those neighboring residential properties?
So the kitchen will be taken care of mechanically, and that's not something that I can really get into. But that's, it's not a fryer. It's not anything to that extent that happens in this type of a facility. So your big contributors are not going to be smell from the kitchen. The noise of the daily trash that happens within the facility and taken care of within the by staff is all indoors. So that's the noise from that is negligible. And then trash pickup is going to be handled during the day. Again, my residents are going to be as sensitive, if not more sensitive, to any noise that happens at odd hours, evenings or early mornings. They're going to be more sensitive than even the neighbors will be. Same with my deliveries. The deliveries can't come at night because I'm on low staff. The deliveries can't come during breakfast hours because I'm serving food. The deliveries can't come during lunch because I'm serving food, and they can't come after dinner because, again, I'm going down to a low staff. So my deliveries to my facility, and to optimize my staff time and my convenience to the resident, has to take place either late morning or early afternoon. And they're going to happen twice a week.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
And just to confirm, it is a full, but I know you talked about a fryer, but it is a full commercial kitchen that will be in the assisted living memory care building.
It
That will
is.
service the 71 beds in there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Question, another standard for the conditional use is community character. Have you been out to the site?
Yes, sir.
And it would describe the character of that community in this area as residential, correct?
Yes.
Residential, large lot residential, single family homes.
Yes. Okay.
And I know, and you answered my question already. You've worked on facilities in nearby locations. In those other locations that you worked on in Pennsylvania, Talaments and Collegeville in particular, were those facilities located in similar neighborhoods, in low density residential neighborhoods?
Some of them are within, or some of them are on the edges or outskirts, or not outskirts, but yeah, on the edges of those. We back up to single family. That's kind of what, when we go out across the country, and I'm doing this with other clients even, that's what we're looking for. We're not putting our seniors into a commercial or an industrial setting. It's a residence. We want to be in that residential setting just as much as anybody else does.
Are you able to share the locations of either the Collegeville or Talaments facilities?
Absolutely. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I can get them to you.
Do you know the name of them?
I don't. They recently sold the Talaments and recently sold. The Southampton one is right across the street from City Hall, in Southampton. The Hanover Township is out that we actually are adjacent to a residential in the Hanover Township location. I can get the road for you. I just don't know off the top of my head. And the Collegeville is a property that sits behind some houses next to a commercial use, and surrounded three sides by residential.
And if you can share them in after this testimony, that would be appreciated by the township.
Absolutely.
I don't believe I have any further questions on behalf of the township at this time.
Thanks, sir.
Are there any members of the Board of Commissioners who are in the room this evening who wish to ask this witness any questions? He can sit there. He's fine. He has his laptop.
All right, I will. I'll try to get through these as quickly as I can. Pardon my my sore throat. Mr. Elmore, Mr. Heleniak kind of presaged my first question, but given that this proposed location, 1209 Rydal Road, is a large lot single family residential neighborhood surrounded entirely by that, and in close proximity to a significant campus where we sit right now. I'm particularly curious to learn about the Collegeville facility, as that's a college town. Okay, so a couple operational questions. If Amazon and other deliveries, Amazon, UPS, but I'm really thinking mostly Amazon, UPS, FedEx. Okay, so right now they assign trucks of a certain size to deliver to this part of Rydal, maybe all of Rydal, Meadowbrook. I don't know how they do their operations, but right now there are trucks. Residents expect trucks of a certain size to deliver their and their neighbors, Amazon, et cetera, packages. Do you foresee, given the number of folks, particularly in independent living, who are going to be added to the area, that this will actually foment larger truck assignment from all of those, from Amazon, from UPS. So now the entire neighborhood, the entire area will need to be served by maybe significantly larger trucks than the neighbors are used to now.
I can't, no, I would say no. I don't know how much 80, I don't know how much 83-year-old uses Amazon. I can't answer that question. It would really depend on the resident themselves.
And again, 83, I missed that one number. Is that the expected average age of the folks in the independent living apartment building?
That'll be, I'm sorry, you're right. That'll be a little bit lower. That'll probably be in that, because that's not a need base. That independent is not a need base. It's a want base resident. So
Okay.
yeah, it could be a little lower.
All right. Now this question is informed by the fact that my own father-in-law, who along with my parents live in assisted living, at one point in the last calendar month, my own father-in-law was responsible for 3 ambulance calls in a 1-week span, 2 of them, as it happens, on one day. So I'm really curious as to where you're estimating, even if it's a really rough estimate, about 5 ambulance calls a month for this entire age range across the buildings.
Well, it's gonna be driven by the acuity. I don't know what your father-in-law suffers from.
He's old.
but that is that 3 a week is an anomaly for one person for sure.
Yes, I agree. But I mean, 5, I don't know. So I was really curious about that 5 a month. If there's anything you can cite, maybe, for next time, whatever, I would be curious as to that number. Okay, so if someone in one of the independent living apartments or in assisted living, I'm separate from memory care, if they require additional care, not necessarily as the term you use, bedridden, but if they start requiring more care, it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me that this facility would not offer their own staff members for like 24/7 care, like wraparound care, right?
Typically, well, it's going to depend on the operator and the licensing of that. And the licensing of that facility. If there's another caregiver that needs to, are you talking about bringing an independent caregiver in?
That's you predicted the next part of my question, actually, because I'm wondering whether or not it's folks who are your employees. There's nothing. I mean, I can't imagine there'd be anything that would preclude either the independent living or assisted living folks who want to stay. I mean, you talked about staff having a conversation with them as their needs change, but if they're really comfortable there and they want to stay there and they want to bring in, BIATA nurses or some, visiting angels, there's nothing that would preclude them from doing that. Right. I mean,
correct.
Okay. And I mean,
and as long as they're still able, as long as they're still an able body, once they become bedridden or can't operate with some of their own faculties, then those are residents that we actually have to move out of that facility based on the licensing, unless there's some provisions that are provided for a temporary, but it would not be a permanent type housing.
Right. So, but conceivably, if we're talking about couples where one is more able-bodied than the other, one still qualifies for your facility, but the other doesn't. If they bring in, if some people need some temporary assistance or some people need something on a full-time basis, it is possible to bring in those outside folks.
Right. But that would be examined on an individual case by case.
Okay. I mean, because I think everyone would agree that those outside folks have to get there somehow. So they too would, they would be driving in cars and they would be whatever shifts they work on. So there's no one, there are no staff members who are going to be residential, right? Who are going to be living there? It would be like wrap around. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I'm almost finished because I know a lot of folks have questions. Okay. Okay, now this actually is this is informed by my specific experiences in my own ward, and also the experiences of my colleagues. How would this facility address the following situation? So we've had situations where suppliers, suppliers, vendors, contractors, deliveries, particularly trash pickup, privately contracted trash pickup, where for their own, because of their own circumstances, they've had to, they've even without warning, they've changed the parameters of pickup. And I know I've gotten calls over the years where, commercial institutional facilities are, they're having the private trash pickup that it causes a lot of noise, actually overnight violates the township noise ordinance. We've addressed all of these, but it's taken significant, in some cases, significant time and work. The police having to actually catch the perpetrators, if you want to call them that, in the act, and then coordinating between the police, myself and the police, and whatever the facility, and then of course the service provider, again, trash or whatnot. What kind of control could you maintain given the residential nature of this neighborhood?
Them being private is the benefit to the operation. If they can't meet our criteria, then we find somebody who can or will. And if they're not meeting our criteria and they're causing problems, then we're coming to the ward as well, just like you would. Because again, the last people that we want making noise, the last people that want noise being made off hours are my residents, and they'll be as big a watchdog as you would have to be, but it would not be anything we would tolerate.
Okay. I know a lot of other folks have questions, so thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lori Henry, Ward 8 Commissioner. Like Commissioner Spiegelman, I am in the throes of this with my own family members as well. And so we've been on a bit of a merry-go-round where my parents have been, and sorry to overshare, but my parents have been in a couple of assisted livings. We had sought out a couple. I've seen far more than I would like to, and then rehabs, and then hospitals, and name them all over. But it's been a bit of a merry-go-round. And I know when it comes to the assisted living, there are places that are tiered, I know, but medication has been a big situation for my parents, and the requirement by the state that requires them to, if they're not fully capable to do that for themselves. And again, this is in assisted living. This is not
Right.
skilled nursing.
Right.
That it would be provided. And in most of these places, there have also been at least part-time nursing on staff,
Yes.
as well as there's been at many of these places, there's been PT and OT in and out all day. So it seems to me that there are a lot of people coming in and out, and that's represented, I think, in what's been spoken about. So am I off at this? Are they in E11 or?
No, they're part of that count. When we got to our numbers, we were at that 14 to 15 mark. There's others that will come in. We can't prescribe medications, but we do have a qualified nurse. That's really the only nurse that you have to have in that facility is someone who is going to be able to dispense medication appropriately.
Okay, this is the first mention of that we've heard tonight, I think. Am I correct?
I'm sorry.
Has that been brought up at all? I don't remember. I from what I was hearing, there was not going to be any nursing, so I was confused by that.
There's no nursing. There's no care that is given by a nurse or a doctor that takes place in this building. A nurse, there's a licensed nurse. It may not have to be a NP or anything like that, but there's a licensed, typically a nurse that has to handle the medications. So the medications that will be in there, that's part of that staff that we talked about. And those medications are typically, provided to the residents at one of those meal times. That's why that health center, that medication and health center is right there next to the dining room.
Okay, I had another question about what you were saying, the life care situation with the, I'm sorry, life care. with the independent living. And at one point you had said something that it would be a phone call or a walk over to the assisted living facility, which I'm not sure how far that is. It's right there, I know. But then it sounded as though there might be some kind of signaling device that was available at the independent living. What would that be? Would that be
Sure, a
for
lot of
individuals?
times the industry calls them nurse call, but it's not really a nurse call. It's more just an emergency call. And each one of those independent resident rooms, and typically down the common areas, would have some sort of a nurse call button. And that nurse call button is alerts back to staff that would be in the assisted building to come in and assess, or it can be picked up via phone.
Okay, and in the assisted living or memory care, there would be individualized devices that each would wear, like a watch or
You can, yeah, there's a gamut.
Okay.
There's pull stations in the bathrooms, there's pull stations next to the bed, there's bracelets, there's charms or pendants around necks. There's several options, and that's really going to depend on the acuity of the resident as well.
Okay, so when you say acuity, that it varies from resident to resident, not specifically for the facility. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elmore.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Jeffrey Brown, Ward 6 Commissioner. How many facilities on average, once they obtain licensing for independent or assisted or memory care, then often reapply for licensing for skilled nursing? Does that happen in the industry based on need?
It can, but a facility that's built like this it'd be hard to change. What you typically see is today's skilled nursing is being retroed into an assisted living or a memory care. To go from assisted living and even a memory care to a skilled nursing would require a whole different code, because you've got different fire ratings and separations that are required for a skilled nursing. You've got medical gases and all that's not in this building that has to be somehow retro pumped into this building. So to go from an assisted living to a skilled nursing that is a big step, and it also changes the use, which we'll have to come back and do this all over again. So I can't imagine that.
So it's more so an infrastructure thing versus a procedural or. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. Secondly, you said that this kitchen would not have a fryer.
Well, it's not. It will have a fryer, but it's not like a 24/7 McDonald's or something to that
Gotcha.
effect.
But a grease trap is required, though.
Grease interceptor likely is going to be required. Not just a
Gotcha.
trap.
And where would based on the current plans, where would the
interceptor
kitchen be vented from? Would they be
Oh, I'm sorry.
vented with the gases and the cooking oil and all that stuff? Would that be vented through the top of the building?
Yes, sir. They're all chased through the top of the building.
Okay. All right. My third question is, you had said that your deliveries were probably scheduled late morning or early afternoon. Have you guys consulted with Penn State Abington and asked them for any type of traffic study in regards to their class schedules and when their high points are for student traffic?
I'm gonna leave that to our traffic engineer to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely.
Are there any other commissioners in the room who wish to ask a question other than President Hecker, who is seated next to me?
Good evening, Mr. Elmore. So I just wanted to clarify for the independent living facility, there is no common kitchen and there is no programming or medical care being provided within that building itself. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so with that, and what would be the scope of service that would be provided if someone had a medical emergency and used the call buttons that are being provided in that building?
Well, that's really going to depend on the operator of the two facilities on how that's going to be handled. But the way that it would be that I perceive it to be handled would be staff would come to that facility and assess, and the independent living will have the ability and likely the wherewithal, if it's a problem, that they would call 911 just like they would if they were living in their own home.
Well, I think that's my point. I'm trying to discern in my own mind the difference between this and basically an age-restricted large apartment building where if someone had a medical emergency, they would call 911.
Well, even in an assisted living, we're not, the staff isn't set up to handle major emergencies. They're there to assess. So if there's a major emergency, our staff in the assisted and memory care will call 911. It's not something that they will, there's no doctor, there's no nurse that's on 24 hours. It's licensed staff that is there to assess, to determine what requirements are needed. But a 911 call will happen in an emergency. That's what the residents of Abington, the ones that live here now.
Understood.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to differentiate what differentiates this from any other large apartment building in the township.
I think structurally, probably not much, other than we provide more common areas than most apartments do. And we provide the community and the contact back to the assisted and the memory care, and give them an opportunity, to age in place. If there's a situation where a resident is a want base and comes into the independent, and then they need more care, those are discussions as well that we have with the family, and they move to our assisted piece of it. So you get a little bit more of a campus feel when you can put all three of those uses together on one site.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any commissioners who are participating virtually who wish to ask any questions? I can't see if anyone's raising their hands. Okay. So we will now turn to what we did last time, which is we understand that a group of neighbors have designated one individual to ask questions on their behalf. That doesn't mean anyone else here tonight who has party status can't ask questions, but I see Ms. Wellheimer going to the microphone, so we will allow her to cross-examine Mr. Elmore.
Gail Weilheimer, 1282 Rydal Road. I am only the initial questioner. I know there are many other people with different topics that have questions. Before I begin, if I can just note for the record, from my count, we have 56 residents here in the room, and it's separate from the commissioners online. It appears to be 23 that are participating online. So let me just start off with your background. You currently live in the state of Oregon, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that is where your business is located?
It is.
From reviewing your website, it's clear that the majority of your work in the area of senior living has been on the West Coast and in Texas. Is that correct?
No.
On your website, you have a map of the United States, and when you hover over each state, it will highlight the number of projects you've had in each state. You've had projects in Oregon, the state of Washington, California, and Texas for the majority of your senior living. What am I missing?
The majority of my senior living, yes.
You indicated 4 projects here in Pennsylvania, and while you cannot name them currently, what are the years you worked on those projects?
Collegeville was in the 2014-15. Town Menson was in around the 2015. Southampton was in 2019, 18-19, and the Hanover Township ended after COVID. Completed.
When specifically did it end?
Probably 21 or 22.
And do you remember the name of that facility or the specific address?
I do not.
But you agree also to provide that to Mr. Heleniak?
I will.
When was your first time coming to Abington to consult on this project?
The first time coming to Abington was 3 months ago.
So after the application was submitted.
Yes.
How long did you spend in Abington the first time you came?
I'm going to object to the relevance of this.
The relevance is this witness has been, may I respond?
Well,
Sorry.
let me overrule the objection,
Okay.
because I think the questioner has the right to ask this witness about his familiarity with the site and the area, because that is in part of the conditional use criteria. He was already asked questions by Mr. Heleniak, and he indicated a familiarity with the site. So we're gonna allow it.
So when you first came to Abington to consult on this project, it was after the conditional use application was submitted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As part of the conditional use application, specifically in the engineer's report, it cited a project narrative from E2K Consulting. E2K Consulting is you, correct?
Yes.
That would be on page 47 and 48 of the application. Are you familiar with the project narrative you submitted as part of the conditional use application?
Yes.
And do you agree with the statement that you placed in the project narrative that was submitted as part of this application?
Yes.
You would agree that you submitted that project narrative prior to ever coming to Abington to consult on this project. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when you talk about the makeup of the community and certain descriptions of the needs of the community, you had never actually been to the community when you created this narrative. Is that correct?
Correct.
When you came to the community 3 months ago for the first time to consult, was that for a township meeting?
Partially, yes.
Okay, so that was for the planning commission meeting?
Yes.
How many days did you spend here?
3 days.
How much time did you spend at the site?
Several hours over a couple of days.
And you would agree with me that you have not revised your narrative or written any report after attending the site. Is that correct?
Correct.
What is the current population of Abington?
I do not know.
What are our demographics?
I do not know.
Can you describe the community immediately adjacent to this property?
Single family housing.
The largest lots in Abington Township, correct?
I will take your word on that.
Okay, so would you agree with me? You are not familiar with the makeup of the different wards in Abington and how they're distinguished from each other?
That's correct.
Well, sir, in your project narrative, and again, I'm referring to page 47 and 48 of the conditional use application, you stated that it was the senior care facility is in the best interest of the township as it will provide housing opportunities for older residents in the township. Do you agree with that statement?
I do.
Okay. And you also indicated in your project narrative that there is a high demand for this facility.
I feel there is, yes.
Okay. How many senior living facilities have been constructed in the 5-mile radius since the comprehensive plan was established in 2007?
I do not know.
How many senior living facilities are within half a mile of this location?
I know of 2.
What are their names?
River. I don't know the name. Sorry.
Right. What is the current occupancy? What is the current available bed space in either of them?
I know that the larger of the 2 has got a waiting list right now.
Okay. If I told you, when did you find that info? When did you discover that information? Or did you learn that?
In discussions that we've had with the team.
When specifically?
I don't have a specific date for you. I'm sorry.
So if I told you as of 3 weeks ago, there were a number of beds available and there was not a waiting list, would you have any reason to disagree with that? And that facility is Rydal Park.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
If I told you that as of 3 weeks ago, there were available beds at the larger facility, which is Rydal Park, less than a half a mile from this facility, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
3 weeks ago, I would have no, I would have nothing to disagree with.
And you agree you specifically did not look into this. You're getting this information from your team. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you have a specific date when you got that information?
Got what information? Sorry.
That it had a waiting list at Rydal Park.
I don't have a specific date. You asked that already.
Okay. The other facility within a half a mile from this residence, whose name you could not remember, is Sunrise of Abington. Are you familiar with the number of open beds at that facility?
I am not.
Okay. So if there are currently a number of open beds at that facility, you have no reason to disagree with that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are you aware of how many, whether it be senior living facilities or nursing care or assisted living or memory care facilities, are in a 5-mile radius of this proposed facility?
No.
All right. Are you familiar with Elkins Crest Health?
No.
Are you familiar with Hillcrest Center on Easton Road?
I know of it, but I don't know much about it. No.
Okay. So you don't know how many beds it presently has or how many available beds there are?
I do not.
Are you familiar with the Protestant Home?
No.
Powerback Rehabilitation Center on Davisville Road?
No, but if that's a rehabilitation center, it's different than what we're providing.
Okay. So you're not aware that Powerback Rehabilitation at Davisville Road also has memory care?
I was not.
So if it has memory care, that is not distinguishable from what you provide, correct?
Correct.
Garden Spring Center, are you familiar with that location?
No.
I have a total of, and I won't go through them all for expediency purposes, 18 senior care facilities within a 5-mile radius. Would you agree with me that you have no knowledge of what the current available bed space is?
I agree.
And if I told you that 95% of them have significant numbers of open beds, do you have any reason to disagree with that?
No.
Do you know how many life care or senior care facilities exist in Montgomery County as on the whole?
No.
Okay. If I told you there were 28 continuing care facilities and 57 nursing care facilities, do you have any reason to disagree with that?
No.
From what you are saying, I want to correct me if I'm wrong, but you also have no knowledge of how many of these facilities have open beds or a significant number of open beds.
I do not.
Are you aware that in addition to just open bed space for residents, as these facilities are not full, the majority of the facilities are also lacking available care because they don't have staffing that can be met?
No.
Right? Are you familiar with Pennsylvania's current issue with staffing senior care facilities?
No, not in the current facilities that I am aware of that I have worked on.
Well, what is the current number of open beds at the facilities you've worked on?
I don't have those numbers right now.
And what if any staffing issues are they having at the facilities you worked on?
None of the reports that I have seen in the past, well, in 6 months ago, came back with any staffing issues for the number of residents.
Okay. So I'd like you to assume for the purpose of this question that the following facts are true.
I want to object to the hypothetical.
I
Would you
can
like to
phrase
res-
it differently if you would like.
This witness was not offered as an expert. He's offered as part of the project team. So I think questioning him on hypotheticals may not be appropriate. So if
I
you can
will
rephrase your
rephrase.
question.
That's
Yes.
not a problem. Sir, you've indicated that in your project narrative that this is, let me just get your exact words. There is a high demand for this facility and that it would be in the best interest of the township as it would provide housing opportunities for older residents. So, since we've established that the Abington area specifically has 18 senior care facilities and Montgomery Township as a whole has 28 senior care facilities and 57 nursing home facilities, the majority of which have open beds, could you explain to me how this facility would either be in high demand or benefit the community?
I want to object to the first part of the question, just to clarify the record, that the characterization in Mr. Elmore's testimony was that he does not know and has no reason to not believe Ms. Wellheimer's statements as to what the occupancy is and the number of facilities and where they're located.
Are you objecting or just?
I'm objecting on that basis that
Your
the characterization of it.
Your clarification regarding her characterization is understood and will be taken into consideration, but I think he can answer.
I'm not objecting to the actual question at the end,
all right.
but to the leading portion of the statement.
You can answer the question.
I think that that the idea behind this type of a facility and the facilities that you're talking about, I think that there's still a need for this type of senior living and this type of campus in the area that we've proposed. And that is because you're talking about, I don't necessarily know all the facilities. You're absolutely right. But I also know that the newer facilities that have come into this area they all have a different feel to them. This is a more of a boutique type. This is a smaller version of some of the larger versions that you've mentioned. And I do feel that there's a need for this type of a residence in the area.
I'm curious, and if you can please articulate for me how you're making that distinction from the 18 other facilities here in Abington if you have no familiarity with them.
My distinction is this is a newer product. When you start talking about, if you're comparing me to 18 different, can you tell me when the other 18 were built?
You're the one that's coming in as the development consultant, sir. So I'm asking you your familiarity with our area.
Then I would say that some of those are probably outdated to the point where they're either going to have to come in retro, where this one it will be cutting edge care. So I do believe that there's room for this type of facility in this area.
All right. Who's going to operate this facility?
That has not been selected yet.
So the information that you've proposed regarding the staffing, what is going to be offered at the facility is speculative, correct?
Yes, to some degree.
Okay. We would move to strike the testimony in that regard as speculative, as we do not know who's going to operate this individual, nor is the developer going to operate, and there is no basis and foundation for the evidence that's been presented by this witness, as we do not know who's going to operate and what, if any, conditions they'll put in place.
Your motion to strike will be denied, but I think the Board of Commissioners from your line of questioning are aware that this witness was giving answers that were based on certain amount of speculation.
So are you going, I want to confirm I heard your testimony correctly. The independent care facility is really just going to be an apartment building, right?
Senior restricted apartment building, yes.
Okay. And it will not have any independent staffing.
No.
There will be no receptionist.
No.
There will be no security.
Security is tied with no security guard, no, but there's security on the building.
Security in the apartment building or security in
Are you
The,
talking about staff or are you talking about security?
I'm asking about people present to assist the needs of the individuals that live there. So will there be a security person at the apartment building?
No,
Will there be a security person anywhere on staff at the facility?
yes.
How many security guards do you intend to have?
Typically for this size facility, there'll be one.
Okay. One for each shift?
No,
When will the security guard be there?
in the evening shift.
There will be an administrator, is that correct?
Yes,
Will there be an assistant administrator?
potentially, yes.
Will there be an administrative assistant for the administrator?
Typically, no.
There will not be any secretarial staff to assist the administrator?
That would be the front desk.
Okay. So the receptionist at the front desk will be the same person who does administrative assistance?
Yes.
How many social workers will you have?
None on staff, but if we need some in, then they will come in.
So when a social worker is needed, they will come to the building, correct? That will be a person that comes to the building to provide social work services.
Yes,
Will you have a dietitian?
that's part of the staff, the
So-
chef staff. Yes.
Yes, that's one. You will have a chef, correct?
Chef is usually a chef and dietitian. Yes.
How many assistant chefs or other kitchen staff will you have?
We're talking about throughout the day.
Well, let's start with throughout the day and then we'll break it down. You're going to serve 3 meals a day, correct?
Yes.
Right? And serve 3 meals a day for the number of residents. How many kitchen staff do you need to get ready in the morning?
Kitchen staff to get ready in the mornings, it's about 3.
In addition to the head chef?
No, that would be the chef and 2 others.
So you're going to be able to meet the needs of everyone in memory care and assisted living with 3 people?
Yes.
How many servers are you going to have for the dining room?
Servers are also when everyone is in the dining room. Those are also the resident caregivers. So servers will be they'll cross over caregivers and servers.
So how many?
Which shift?
We're talking about first thing in the morning right now. How many?
Probably 4.
How many dietary aides are going to be bringing food to the residents that can't get to the dining room?
1 maybe. This is a communal dining.
Well, sir, you would agree with me that not everyone in assisted living or memory care can make it to the dining room every day, correct?
Correct.
And I assume you're still going to feed the people who can't make it to the dining room, right?
Yes.
So you'll have to deliver the food to them.
Correct.
So you are going to need someone to deliver the food to them. Am I correct?
Yes.
Are you going to have a director of maintenance and housekeeping?
I'm sure that there will be. Yes.
How many maintenance staff are you going to have for this facility?
Don't know.
Well, how could you possibly have a total number of staff members on your largest shift if you don't know how many maintenance staff you're going to have?
Because maintenance isn't necessarily there during my major shift.
So if there's a spill, there's something that breaks, you're not going to have anyone available to work on to address it?
No, there's staff that's there that can address it. There's a maintenance man on staff.
Okay, so how many maintenance people are you going to have during the day shift? I understand you're speculating because you're not the operator, but you came in as your development consultant. So how many?
Objection. He answered that he doesn't know.
And then he started answering with a number. So let's get an answer.
We're going to sustain the objection. Perhaps you can rephrase your
Sure.
question or ask a different one.
Sir, how many maintenance staff members are you going to have during the day?
Which shift are you asking?
Starting in the morning.
Morning, 1.
How many housekeeping staff are you going to have? Well, let's just clarify. When you say day shift, you establish that the day shift would start before breakfast in your project narrative. What time would it start?
They'll likely start coming in around 5:30.
Okay. And go until what time?
They're typically 8-hour shifts that are staggered.
So it would be
Staggered
until
entrance.
approximately 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yes.
So during that 5:30 to 3:30 shift, how many housekeepers are you going to have?
They will likely not come in at 5:30. They'll probably come in around 10, and they will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 to start. And then a lot of the housekeeping is taken care of in the evening hours.
Okay. And regardless of whether or not they're overlapping, when we talk about the largest shift, even if there are overlaps, that all counts for the total number, correct?
Correct.
Are you going to have an activities director for independent living?
No.
You said you're going to have an activities director for the assisted living and memory care facility, correct?
Correct.
How many aides are you going to have in the working for the activities director?
That's usually the operating staff as well. So it's an overlap.
So it's in your testimony, it's going to be the same people that are dealing with the activities of daily living, the therapeutic needs, the getting people meals, serving people in the dining room, and doing activities with them? All the same 4 people?
No, not all the same 4 people.
You indicate there's going to be 4 people that are going to be attentive to the needs of I'm sorry, it might have been 6 people, 6 to 7 people attentive to the needs of the assisted living residents. And when I asked you about dining staff servers, you said it'd be the same people that care for the residents. So, and when I just asked you about aides for activities, you said it's going to be the staff. Please distinguish who's doing what during the day.
So if I have staff that are taking care of my residents, and we're going to do 70 residents, there's 10 staff on during my max shift. Those 10 staff are responsible for 10 beds each. Sorry, 7. I'm sorry. There were 7 staff that are responsible for 10 beds each.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have residents that are in the dining room, then I have staff that are responsible for those residents in the dining room. And then that's where my crossover can take place. If they're in the dining room and I have kitchen staff and resident staff that can manage the residents that are in the dining room, then I have others that can take care of any other spills that you talked about, anything that might break, and anything that needs to take place within the resident rooms for housekeeping type stuff away from the dining room. So I don't have 7 people standing in the hallway waiting for someone that needs assistance. My staff moves through the entire building wherever they are needed. So I don't need excessive staff in the dining room if a majority of my residents are in the dining room. If a majority of my residents in the dining room and some of them have to eat in their bedroom, then whoever's left over that I don't need in the dining room at that time they're the ones who are delivering food. They're the ones who are taking care of other items that happen within the facility for operations. So you can break down these numbers all you want to, but my staff has to be fluid and has to be fluent in all needs of the resident.
So what I'm hearing you say, it's these same staff members on the day shift, save 7 staff members that are going to serve food in the cafeteria, meet the residents' needs in their rooms, help with the therapeutic activities, help with their activities of daily living, and help provide the activity entertainment. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
There are specifics that we've already talked about. You mentioned the activities director. That is a separate person than one of the 7. There is the administrative folks that we talked about up front that are separate from the 7. There's the kitchen that are separate from the 7, and there's a maintenance. But the maintenance there's one maintenance person per shift. I don't need any more maintenance than that per shift. I don't need any other staff on that to successfully take care of the residents.
Okay, let's move to the next area. If someone needs occupational therapy, occupational therapists come in during the day. Is that correct?
No, typically an occupational therapist or any physical therapist that needs to happen would be someone that we would take in the bus and take them to their doctor.
So your position is you will not have any OT, PT, or speech come on site. Is that
I don't know I don't know ultimately what that position, what the operator would do, but in a facility this size, no, those would probably be taken out of house.
so? If the operator intends to have OT, PT, and speech come on site, that would add to the number of individuals there during the day. Is that correct?
Potentially.
You have a med station on the form that you showed. How many individuals, how many nurses are you going to have to give out meds?
2.
How many people are you going to have as part of the laundry staff?
The laundry staff are you 2 to 3?
How many people are going to be responsible for marketing?
That comes out of the admin piece and probably comes out of home office, whoever's marketing.
You're presuming that there's going to be a home office, but we don't know who's the operator yet, correct?
Correct.
How many people are going to be, you talked about buses taking the residents all sorts of places. How many buses are you going to have?
Typically for this size, just 1.
So each shift you'll have at least one driver for transportation?
Usually that's the activity director, yes.
So your position's the same when it comes to podiatry, having primary care physicians come in, optometrists and dentists. None of that would be coming into the facility?
None of it's set up. This facility isn't set up for any of that, correct?
Okay. And again, as you stand here today, there is no current plan for who the operator will be. Is that correct?
Objection's been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Sir, do you know when the property was purchased?
Do I know when?
When?
I do not.
Okay. Were you involved with the planning of this property when the developer wanted to put 82 townhomes on it?
I was not.
Were you involved when the developer received a tax assessment reduction based on the purchase price of their property?
No.
Are you familiar with the process of receiving a review of tax assessment and reduction of taxes if the fair market value of a property is affected?
Going to object to the relevance of this line of questioning.
Ms. Wellheimer, would you like to respond?
Sure. In the narrative from this witness, he talked about the benefit to the community. If this, as testimony subsequently will be presented to show, and was presented at the Planning Commission meeting, if this development does in fact affect the fair market value of the adjacent properties, then as this developer reduced their tax bill based on their purchase price, the adjacent community could reduce their taxes based on the reduction in fair market value, therefore adversely impacting the township and Montgomery County as a whole.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I'm going to let you ask the question and let him answer. But I think if he indicates he's not familiar with this area, although you may have a series of questions, it might be best just to move on.
I understand.
yeah.
Sir, are you familiar with the process here in Montgomery County for getting a tax reduction if the fair market value of a property is reduced?
No.
You talked about in your narrative the benefit to the community and said there would be no negative impact on the community. You do not plan on having a septic system, do you?
No.
You're going to connect to the public sewer system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. At the time the sewer system was installed, this area was zoned exclusively for low density residential, which means this property would have no more than 3 or 4 single family homes on it. Have you ever spoken with the township wastewater treatment director regarding if the township's sewer system can handle this facility?
I believe this question was asked before. I'm not the engineer on this, so I wouldn't be the one that can answer that question. And I believe that was asked at the last
Well, if
testimony.
the engineer said this would be an appropriate question for you, do you you disagree with that?
He did not say this would be appropriate. He would not have said that was an appropriate question for me. Not for me.
Okay, please.
So, sir, you're saying you don't have the answer to that, correct?
I would not have the answer to that. No.
Okay, and you would agree with me, you personally have not assessed whether or not this facility would be taxing on the township wastewater treatment system. Is that correct?
I have no knowledge of that.
How many toilets will be in the two buildings?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 130,
How many sinks?
excluding the kitchen, somewhere in the neighborhood of 130.
Okay. We have one industrial kitchen. How many individual kitchens?
46.
Where will residents in the facility go for hospital care?
To the hospital that's right here around the corner.
Well, we have two hospitals in the area. Have you?
Either one.
At the Planning Commission meeting, we heard a statement regarding that this facility would adversely impact the emergency room of Abington Memorial Hospital, which is the closest hospital. Has there been any consulting with Abington Memorial Hospital to determine if they could accommodate the increased needs due to this facility?
I would, well, no, but I would disagree that there would be an adverse, because these residents already live in this area. If there's a problem with a resident today, are they going to the hospital? Likely.
But you would agree with me, no one has consulted with either of the local hospitals.
Correct.
Do you know the name of the other hospital?
I do not.
You stated in your, and this is my last area, you stated in your project narrative that the staff will live in close proximity to this facility. Where do you believe the staff will be coming from?
Some of the staff will come from close proximity. There's also 2 train stations that they could come in on as well.
Well, I'll get to the train station in a minute. You mentioned bus stops, that people, both the residents and others, would take the bus. Where are the bus stops that are close to this facility?
That might have been a mistake. It probably should have been train.
Okay. You mentioned 2 train stations. How would someone get from the train station? Well, first, which are the 2 you're referencing?
I don't know the names of them.
Okay.
There's the Rydal station. I know that.
All right. So how would someone safely get from the Rydal station to this location?
I don't know.
Okay. Are you aware that there are no sidewalks that get you from the train station to this facility?
I am aware of that.
And are you aware of the amount of traffic that's on Valley Road that an individual would have to cross in order to get to this facility?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to presume that the other train station you're referring to is the Meadowbrook train station. How would someone get from the Meadowbrook train station to this facility?
I don't know.
Okay. Meadowbrook train station is on Valley Road. Valley Road is one of our busiest roads, and there are no sidewalks there. Do you have there's no plan for how someone would get here from the train station? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You also speculated that the staff would carpool. What is your basis for that?
It's historic.
Historic based on what? What
Based on-
in our community have you looked at to show that that is historically relevant?
Nothing in this community.
Okay. So are you aware that there are no staff members at Rydal Park that are known to take the train?
No.
Are you aware that there are very few, if any, staff members that are known to carpool at Rydal Park?
No.
Are you aware that the same information is true for Sunrise facility? that staff members drive individual cars to get there. Are you aware of that?
I am not.
So when you say historical information, that is not based on the two closest facilities to this proposed facility. Is that correct?
Correct.
So my final question for you is, could you explain how this 4-story apartment building comports with the character of the community, which is a requirement of the conditional use?
This 3-story building meets all the criteria for building height, and the models that you see right now are massing models that provide us with what this facility could look like.
Sir, my question was not, does it comply with the code? My question is, how does it comport with the character of the community? Could you answer that question, please?
Only in the same way. This community, I mean, I understand that the adjacent around this is single family housing, but the community at large, I believe that that what we're showing right now does meet the character of the community.
No further questions.
If there are members present this evening who have party status, please come forward, identify yourself, and then you can ask Mr. Elmore questions.
Hi, my name is Dr. Gary Lamsback, Lamsback. I live at 1441 Lewis Road. I am a party to this. I am board certified in internal medicine and geriatrics, and I also go to many of these local nursing homes. So my questions are going to be condensed based on the time, but not being a lawyer, not being an engineer, 2 sentences really struck me in the application. One is the project is not going to be detrimental to the properties in the immediate vicinity. We're not here to debate that today. The second one, which really struck me, is the following, and you agree to this. There is a significant demand for the project, and we have a significant housing need in this area. However, when you were asked about visiting the different facilities, you don't have any information about what's available. So let me ask you a few questions about them. Have you ever been to St. Joseph's Manor?
No.
Do you know how many beds they have?
No.
Do you understand how many open beds they have?
I'm going to object to the extent that Ms. Weilheimer just went through a list of facilities.
I'm condensing it. I'm hitting ones
We're
that she didn't bring
gonna
up.
overrule the objection, but questions that have been asked and answered, we're not going to go over repeatedly.
These facilities were not brought up
Okay,
in her presentation. So I have a whole list that she brought up. I'm not going to go over those.
okay.
I'm going to
But
bring up St. Joseph's.
I
Manor.
overruled the objection. You can ask your question.
I greatly appreciate that. Are you aware of the Protestant home?
No.
Okay. Do you know how many beds they're approved for?
No.
He's not aware of
400.
Right.
And do you know how many beds that they presently can fill? This goes
He's
to,
not aware of the facility, and you cannot testify.
no, I'm
You have
asking
to ask, no, so when you ask him a question,
Okay.
he says, I don't know how many beds there are, and you say 400, you're
Okay.
testifying.
I'm
If
sorry.
you ask him a question,
Okay.
and if he says he doesn't know, then you should move on to the next
Okay.
facility.
Do you know how many beds are full at the Protestant home?
No.
Do you know what the Medicare Stars program is?
I'm sorry.
Medicare Stars program.
No.
You don't?
He's answered the
Okay.
question that he does not know.
Okay. Well, we'll testify what that is later on. Are you aware of the Medicare Stars analysis of St. Joseph's Manor and also Redeemer Lafayette on a scale of 1 to
Objection. He
5?
said he doesn't know what the
The
program.
objection is sustained.
So you don't know?
No, he doesn't have to answer the question.
Okay.
He indicated he doesn't know what the program is.
Okay. Do you know what the newest nursing home in this area that was built, where it is and what it's called?
Nursing home?
Yeah, nursing facility. You know,
No.
they do memory care.
No.
Okay. Yeah, and you do not, or do you know the names of the 2 hospitals? I think Gail asked that. You do not know the hospitals or their ER capabilities.
That's correct.
Okay. So in this statement that there's significant demand and significant housing need, we haven't done any research that I'm aware of to substantiate that conclusion. Is that correct? How do you substantiate that conclusion? With all these open beds?
I don't know about the open beds.
Okay, well, if you took a hypothetical and assumed that what I'm telling you is correct,
Objection to the
He's not
hypothetical.
an expert. He does not have
Okay.
to answer
the
hypothetical
point's been made.
questions. Yep.
The point's been made. For interest of time, I'll stop here. There's other things later on.
Anyone else who's present who has party status?
You want me to sit over here? Michelle DeBello. Yes, DIBELLO. Hi, Mr. Elmore. Michelle DeBello. I live on Woodland Road.
You're
right
going to
down
need to
the
move the
street.
microphone a little closer and speak a little louder.
Yeah, I live on Woodland Road right down the street from this proposed development. Who hired you?
MB Crafters,
And then that's the builder?
that's the developer, yes.
Okay, and so the owner of the property, Shavram Partners, they didn't hire you?
That's who, that's same group.
Okay, who are the partners?
Objection to the relevance.
What's the relevance?
Well, if you'll allow me to continue, the relevance is one of the partners owns a nursing home that's a failed nursing home right 1.4 miles from this.
Okay, and I'm
Objection
going
to
to
that.
sustain that objection.
Okay. Okay, so for what purpose were you hired?
As a consultant to assess the site for senior housing and how that might lay out and meet the criteria of the zoning code.
So regarding the site analysis, you do an evaluation of the proposed property and you help the client determine if it's a good fit.
Correct.
So did you do a site analysis for this property?
The team did, yes.
Okay, and you determined it was a good fit
Yes.
for this neighborhood? Did you do a risk evaluation?
Not at this point. We haven't done a risk. And what risks are you
Well,
requesting?
I'm just interested to know when you evaluated the property, the whole project as a whole, you must come to benefits and risks and present it to the owners. And I'm wondering if you had identified any risks with the project.
Through all of our studies and reviews, as far as the site is concerned, as far as traffic is concerned, access, slope, there were no risks that we
So
we found.
when you looked at it and you looked at all the stuff that you said, the traffic, the slope, the character, none of that was a problem.
Correct.
Okay. Did you do a development cost analysis?
I believe that the client has done that, but not me. No,
So do you know the total development cost for this project?
I do not.
On your website, you talk about the importance of a neighborhood meeting with the adjacent neighbors and addressing the concerns or the comments. You were not hired to work with the neighbors in a mutually beneficial plan, were you?
I was not.
Have you ever met with the neighbors?
No, not individually.
So as far as the property owners, it's listed on the Montgomery County property website that the owners are Shavram Partners, and they list that as Moshe Barzani and David Mermelstein. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So they're the partners.
Yes.
Okay. So you talked about the high demand and the nursing homes, and I won't go through all that, but I do have one specific question. From your research, are you aware that the Chelsea Senior Living Facility, it's a mix of independent and assisted living, similar to what you're proposing. It's a 62-bed facility. It's just over a mile from this project on 440 Old York Road. Were you aware that this facility was moved?
Was moved?
Yes, it was existent there and now it's not. It's shuttered.
I was not.
If I told you that the COO of the Chelsea Senior Living.
Objection to the relevance
Now,
of,
what's the relevance of this?
The relevance is that there is a shuttered nursing home owned by one of the partners. And
I've already,
We're gonna sustain that objection.
it's not.
Okay.
Okay. It's not.
We're going to sustain that objection.
Okay, understood. So would you agree that an unused empty,
objection to
We're
the
gonna
line of
sustain
question.
that objection. We're not going to allow this line of questioning.
so you said you don't know who will operate this facility, is that correct?
Again, we're gonna sustain that objection.
This
We're not going to allow this line of questioning. You asked him a question about a facility. He said he was not aware of it. And now
I'm talking about the proposed.
okay.
So do you know who will operate this project?
No.
No, you're just the consultant and then they build it and then somebody that we don't know will come in and run it.
Yes,
Okay. Will it be a profit or a nonprofit?
that is undetermined.
Do you know if the developer will request tax credits for the development of this
I do not.
facility? Do you agree that if this facility is a nonprofit, that the township and the county could lose their tax base from this?
I have no comment on that.
That's all my questions.
Thank you.
My name is Rochelle Hittinger, and I live at 1321 Meadowbrook Court in Rydal. Hitttinger. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions concerning the plans that you introduced originally, which
ma'am.
show the layout of the different buildings.
Okay.
First, I'd like to refer to the independent living facility. Could we possibly have that placed up there?
That's exhibit 5, A5.
That's, no, not that one, the other one. The
So
one,
that they start just to help.
You'll
expedite
just
this,
need to
they
scroll.
start at approximately page 5 of that, of the exhibit A5 are the independent living plans. There you go.
That's the one.
Yep.
So it's labeled on the bottom as a basement. And I was wondering if you can explain to us why that terminology was used. For example, is that below grade?
Yes, a majority of that floor is below grade.
And how much below grade is it? How many feet below grade level is it?
The building, the floor of the
That particular part of the independent living facility, how many feet below grade is it? You said, everybody has said it's below grade. We agree with that.
Sure. So what you're seeing in the blue up there, in the blue dashed lines around the whole thing, that's all stem wall. So it's not, it's not actually floor. The only basement portion of this is about 1,400 square feet. It's at the entryway. And the reason it's down there below that is we've taken advantage of the grade of the site, and it's you come in off the street and then you come down to this level here. This level here is probably 12 feet below what is, and again, we haven't engineered this yet completely, but it's about 12 feet below the first floor that's above it. But the only piece of that what you see in black right now is all that's basement. The rest of it is just stem wall for the foundation of the building above it.
Correct. But what I'm saying to you is that when you're coming in, that is sloped toward that entryway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how many feet, what is the slope then? Let's say coming in from Woodland and going through the parking lot to get to the entrance where that is located at the independent living facility.
That would be a question for the engineer. I don't know what the slope, it meets accessibility requirements for parking lots. That I know.
Okay. And then the other floors, of course, are built on top of that. But when you come into that entry, you're coming in at what it looks like a street level. Is that correct? In other words, this is your accessible point. Your people are going to come out and enter the building. This is the only entrance to the independent living building. Is that correct?
From the front side, that is correct.
Thank you. Okay, let's go now to the other building, which would be the ALMC building.
That'll be which floor? The bottom floor?
Correct.
So that'll be the first slide. Thank you.
Okay, is this also built as a basement? It says it's a basement.
It is, and it's defined as a basement because of majority of the floor is underground.
The majority of this floor is underground. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
How much underground is it? Feet. Again.
So, I don't know how many feet underground, but it meets the definition of a basement. That's what I can tell you.
All right, but when you look at this and when you're coming through the there's a road, if I'm not mistaken, right about where it says common areas. That's where the road would be. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that road is coming into the property, and that is coming in at what appears to be a street level.
Yes.
So my question to you is, if it's coming in at what appears to be street level, why are you referring to it as a basement and below grade?
Because it's cut into the hill, and 51% of this level is underground. So it's what's called a daylight basement. So a portion faces the street, is daylit, and the rest of the building is a basement. It's considered a basement.
Okay.
By definition. And it's also, there's only 2 floors above this one.
Well, you're showing 3 in your plan. Your plan has 3 more pages attached to it.
Can we scroll to the next page, please? And the
That's first floor, correct. And then
next one,
correct. And the second floor. And then you have the third floor.
which has no units.
Well, there are units on the other side.
Correct. But there's no basement on the other side. There's underground parking on the other side. So this is a 3-story building on the front side and a 3-story building on the back side. It's basically a split level. Is that what you're asking?
I think you clarified it. Coming in, one more question concerning the parking.
Okay.
It was also testified that this is also below grade.
It is.
And how much below grade is it?
I think it would be the same depth below grade as the basement piece of it. So it would be probably 12 feet below grade, cut into that hill.
Yeah, that's fine. Can we now go back to what A3, which is the overall plan? That's the one. Okay, so if I'm coming into the facility and I'm going through that parking lot is at grade, is that correct? The outdoor open parking is at grade.
This here?
Yes. Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. Then in order to reach the parking, which is underground, which you testified to is below grade, how would I access that?
Come up this hill right here, and this continues to go up, and right there is the entrance into the parking garage that's underground.
Then how do you account for not having any sort of sloping or ramp in there if that area is under grade?
There will be a slope down.
There will be. And where is that slope taken into account?
That ramp starts here and comes into the parking garage.
Okay. And there is a ramp there that goes down. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that ramp taken into consideration when the number of parking spots were laid out underground?
The ramp was not.
the ramp was not taken into consideration when the parking spaces were laid out. Is that correct?
I don't know that I understand your question. The ramp is not, we don't include parking spaces as part of the ramp, but the ramp, the parking that's under there has to accommodate a ramp and a drive aisle.
And I'm asking you the question, when the number of parking spaces was laid out and presented to the township, was that ramp taken into consideration at that point in time?
Yes.
It does not appear that that there is enough room in there for all those spaces that you're proposing, which is what, 38 spaces?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Without that ramp getting in the way, considering the amount of grade that has to be covered.
The way that it's laid out, the ramp comes down into the garage, and the engineer has confirmed that we can get 38 parking spaces down there.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ed Troffer. I have a PhD in chemistry. I live at 1625 Amity Road. On the parking, you had said that in the non-assisted living apartment area, there will be no staff there at all, including no support staff, no social staff, zero. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You also said that of the people that live there, typically about 75% have cars. So we'll have those cars there.
That's correct.
Okay. Now for the other 25%, how do they get food? How do they go to a doctor's office? How do they get clothing if there's no support staff to help them?
That support staff comes from that bus that we've been talking about all night. If they need to go somewhere, it's a part of the campus. If they need rides, there are rides that are provided.
So is this going to be a bus that's programmed to be there at certain times per day so that people know to go downstairs to get on the bus? How do they know?
The programming is done all the time. If there's outings that are calendared for all the residents, regardless of which facility which side you live in. So yeah, we're going to the grocery store today at this time and this time.
And
we're going to doctor's visits. We're going to dentist visits. You schedule a time on the bus. Absolutely.
Okay. And that's done from the other building then?
That's done in both buildings. Correct.
So, but where are the people that are doing that?
Well, the activities director will be housed in the assisted living building. Yes.
Okay. And you've already counted that person for parking.
Yes.
Okay. Also, you mentioned in the kitchen, when they're frying, there's going to be fat coming off and there's going to be an exhaust that takes that up to the roof.
Yes.
When we were here last time, we were also told when there's any type of waste inside the building, that waste will go to a separate room that will have tight doors to keep that odor from getting out into the building.
Correct.
Correct. And that will be taken up to the roof. The waste will then
The
be
odor?
expelled. Yeah.
It'll
Okay.
all be mechanically exhausted
Okay.
appropriately.
So now all these things that cause odor are heavier than the oxygen and nitrogen in the air. So unless there's a strong wind to blow that away, won't that land down on the houses adjacent?
The way that the exhaust is handled today, the way that the exhaust is required to be handled by licensing and township codes, it'll be minimal if there's any. You're the chemist. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. I know it's heavier than everything else, so it's going to drop. So what are we going to do to make sure it doesn't drop on all the adjacent houses?
We won't be allowed to do it if it drops on the adjacent houses. That's all I can tell you.
Okay. But all right. I don't want to get into it, but have you ever been familiar with the Nabisco plant a few miles from here?
I know of the Nabisco plant. Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the odor that came from there?
Not personally, no.
Okay. But it's something that needs to be dealt with.
Very good.
Anybody?
Still there? I appreciate you've been up there for a long time. My name is Joe Ragg, 1440 Woodland Road. Just a couple follow-up questions.
Sure.
You've mentioned a few times in answering some of these questions that the team has given you that information. Who is the team? Your team, or is it
It's our entire team. There's
your organization?
No. The development team that's here.
Okay, so Mr. McHugh, they'll be the people that are the witnesses. You're going to give us a list of those witnesses.
Right. So the remaining, Mr. Elmore is the development consultant. We still have a traffic engineer who's going to testify. You already heard the civil engineer
I got
that's
it.
going to testify, and there's
just-
a planner that will also testify.
I just know it's late. I'd just like to understand who that is.
Yep.
Okay, is that fair?
That's who's part of the development team,
Okay.
and plus the owner.
Just wanted to know who that was. You had mentioned earlier when folks were talking about the other facilities in the area that this is a cutting edge care facility. That was your words, not mine, yours.
Absolutely.
Compared, but I heard there would be no PT. I heard there would be no doctor on site. Heard there would be no other healthcare. So how can it be cutting edge? How do you describe cutting edge when those folks aren't there?
Sure. And likely, services that are provided on site are not going to be as profound as some others. But when you start talking about the actual design, lifestyle, and living, that's really what we're talking about. When you talk about life safety, when you talk about care, that's what I'm talking about with cutting edge. What comes into the facility, what is provided to the residents, ultimately at the end, that's going to be a discussion that we have with the actual provider of this facility. There are spaces that are allowed that are left out and left blank. We left it pretty generic. So when we do pull that care provider into this, we can start designating those spaces.
Okay. Earlier question about 5 ambulance visits per month. That was an estimate, obviously. Right?
Yes.
Does that include potential ambulance visits from the apartment complex as well? Because there's got to be some ambulances.
Yeah, I was really just looking at the assisted piece of it.
So based on your experience, an estimate as to how many ambulance visits might come from that apartment complex? As large as it is, you know how many people are going to be living there. So there's probably, in your experience, a way to estimate that.
Yeah. I would say our independents are far less than our assisteds typically. So maybe 1 or 2 if you're going to add, if we need to add some numbers to that.
Just curious, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Can you mention, you're talking about deliveries, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would supplies, linens, toilet articles, things like that be a separate delivery, or would they be included?
No, those all come in and they're washed on facility. They're washed in the facility at the commercial laundry.
Okay. And trash, could you put up A3 again? I think it was A3.
With the site plan or the?
Yeah, the plan.
Yeah, it's A3.
So where is that?
Can we zoom in on that? a
Yeah,
little
it
bit?
should be bigger. I agree with you. I can't see that for you.
I can't either. So I'm glad you said.
So first question about trash. That's probably.
There you go.
First question about trash is, you had been talking about the trash that was going to be taken from the assisted living and memory care facility, right? Can you show me where that is?
So the enclosed trash area is right here at the bottom of the bottom
okay.
of this corner, and this is that screen wall that we were talking about with the dumpsters in.
Okay, so 2 times trash a week, you said?
That seems
I got it.
logical.
Would that also include the trash from the apartment building?
Yeah. So what'll happen here is there's space on each one of the floors, and
Yeah.
you'll have one of the staff that works in here go and collect that on trash day
and bring it over.
and then bring it over.
Okay, so that, and then my last question about that is that wall that you're building to hide the trash can, I guess. How far is that from that property line? So if I lived in one of those places right there. Yeah, go ahead. We heard 20 feet last time we were here.
Sorry, back to the.
Yeah, go ahead. That's okay. Yeah,
From that
yeah,
property line to here is 52 feet.
okay. And
So this right here,
Yeah.
from that, so this dash line is the setback line that we're required to meet.
Mhm.
Minimum of 50 feet.
so if I lived in that middle property, I'm 52 feet from that wall.
Well, you're 50 with, so this is the pinch point right here is the
Got it.
52 feet. So it's a little bit further and then it's, yeah, you know,
How-
60 feet.
How far am I from you right now? Guess 30 feet, 40 feet,
20 feet.
20. Wow. Okay. I'd probably get a slide rule out to see how far, but you're not going to testify on the consistency of that property to the neighborhood. But if I lived in one of those properties, I'll be looking up at a trash can. Right.
Looking up at trash cans.
Or the, I'm sorry, the
wall.
hammerhead that we're not going to use anymore.
So you've got setback for us from.
Yeah, I got it. I understand.
And then you've got setback from houses.
Answer, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, setback from houses
Yeah.
to the property line.
Yeah.
And then you've got a wall. You're not going to be able to see. I mean, this all slopes from up here down across to here.
Yeah, I understand. All I'm asking you is if I lived in those lots right there, I'll be looking up at the hammerhead that we're not going to use and the walls and things like that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, like up to there. Okay.
Yes.
I just have a hard time trying to understand how that's consistent with the neighborhood.
Well, and it'll be through your landscape buffer right here, but that, fair enough.
I mean, I'm probably about 50 feet from here. That's all. Okay.
Say that again.
I said 50, if I'm 20 in there, I'm about maybe here, looking up.
I'm
at the
gonna
wall.
object.
Yeah, is there a question? Yeah.
I got a tape measure with me if you'd like me to
Okay.
get that out. Want me to get the tape measure out? Oh, here's someone. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kimbrough. I live at
I don't-
Lisa Kimbrough, Kimbro, 1311 Meadowbrook Court. I'm sorry, I've lost my voice. Just one quick question.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
became difficult to try to go through all the staff we had. I think we ended up at 25 or 26. Would it be possible for you to do a schedule that shows the people down the side, their titles, and across the top, the hours of the day? Because I couldn't keep tabs on it.
So are you asking him to produce a document?
Am I not allowed to do that?
Well, you can ask, but you're supposed to be asking him questions regarding his testimony. Whatever evidence the applicant wants to produce, the applicant can
I
produce
guess
that.
my question gets back at the fact that every time a particular position was asked, like, are we going to have this? Are we going to have that? About 3/4 of the time, the answer was yes. And I feel like if we don't get something in writing, we might be missing something. I
Do
don't
you
know
have
how
a
to.
question do you have a question for
I'd like
this?
to
witness?
have the schedule. Can he produce it?
Okay, that's a question you're going to ask him. You're asking him to produce a document. That's up to his attorney.
Can I address that? I mean,
Sure.
I think there's been also some additional requests for Mr. Heleniak. So I imagine we're getting close to the witching hour here. I don't think we're complete with the cross-examination of Mr. Elmore, so we can provide.
Yeah.
Whenever we restart, maybe we can start with some additional information from him and then pick up cross-examination.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know the rules.
No, that-
So, Mr. McHugh has just hit on the issue that we do not appear to be done with cross-examination yet. But Mr. McHugh, do you plan on redirecting?
I'm going to have some redirect, I
So
imagine.
I think redirect is going to lead us into a whole lot more of recross. So we are going to break at this moment, with the understanding that Mr. Elmore will be back. We will complete cross-examination for those individuals who have not had the opportunity to ask questions this evening. We will then go into any redirect, excuse me, by Mr. McHugh, and then we will go into recross at that point in time. At this, yes.
Can I just make a motion?
I don't think this would be an appropriate time for an emotion because we have not completed his testimony as of yet. If we had completed his testimony, it would probably be appropriate for a motion, but I think he needs to complete his testimony before a motion is made.
It was to one of your rules. So just a motion to reconsider for you to rule on at the next time, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. So I would make a motion for you to reconsider, and we would defer your ruling until the next hearing date. The preclusion of the questions from Mrs. DeBello regarding the Chelsea Senior Living Facility. We're not taking exception to the fact that you are addressing who owns that property, but as this witness has testified as to the needs of an additional senior living facility in the community, the fact that there is a shuttered one 1.4 miles away should be able to be explored by Mrs. DeBello, and we ask you to reconsider your ruling at the next
Okay.
listing.
We'll take that under advisement. As of now, we do not have a date for the next hearing. When a date is selected, it will be posted on the website, and every person who has party status who we have email addresses for, will receive notification. We are mindful that we are entering, I think Friday is December 1st, and we're going to be entering into the holiday season, and scheduling may be a little bit more difficult. So we are hoping to get another hearing scheduled in December, but if not, it's about part of it also, it's about the availability of this room. If we have another date scheduled by the time the Board of Commissioners meets in December, President Hecker will announce it. It'll be advertised. People will get notice. So we are currently looking for other dates.
And with that, we will formally recess the hearing.